on? All right. A lot of people have been asking, what are you idiots doing? Why are you putting a compound turbo setup on a gas engine? That's stupid. You shouldn't need it. You should be able to spool plenty quickly with a twin setup or a properly sized single. What's wrong with you? So, here's why we're doing what we're doing. Mainly, it's because the altitude we're dealing with on the mountain. Getting a turbo that will spool at altitude and also be able to make enough boost pressure to maintain our power levels is almost impossible. Last year, our main focus was on getting a quick spool. We wanted to get off the corners hard and make up time there. We had a really tiny AR on a smaller size turbo, and the car spooled and responded great. We loved the response. However, it led to a few really major issues that slowed us down overall. So the first of these issues was superheating the air going into the intercooler. Because we were driving the turbo so hard and driving it right at its peak, we were in a bad spot in the efficiency graph. We were overheating the intake charge, and we were seeing really high IATs. There were times where the IATs were getting into the 170 degree range. The intercooler would bring them right back down, but it wasn't able to maintain the inlet air temp that we were looking for. Second problem that we had was that it would not make the boost we needed to get the power we wanted at altitude. At sea level in the shop, I think it was 16 pounds of boost was 1,100 horsepower at the wheels. We got to Denver and we were working on the dyno at M-Spec there, and the turbos would not make more than 16 pounds to save their life, and we were about 800 horsepower at the wheels. So we lost almost 300 horsepower at the wheels with the same boost, but didn't have the ability to turn the boost up. We were stuck. There was nothing else we could do. Thirdly, we had a really, really bad pressure ratio between boost and exhaust pressure. Because we were trying to drive the turbo so hard, we ended up with a lot of restriction in the exhaust. We were seeing almost a 2-to-1 pressure ratio on the exhaust side, which means if we had 16 pounds of boost, we were pushing close to 30 pounds of exhaust back pressure. Way too high. So, to solve all of these problems, we came up with the compound setup. If we try to just run a larger turbo to decrease the back pressure and get the pressure ratio right and help with the superheating the air and get the pressure ratio right, we're going to sacrifice response. We're going to have a car that's really lazy coming off the corners. We don't want to do that. That's not acceptable. So we have to keep the smaller turbo. So if you're going to keep the smaller turbo, but you need more boost pressure, how do you do that? Well, that's where the low pressure turbo comes in. The low pressure turbo is there to allow us to step up the air pressure when we're at the mountain on hopefully around a 2-to-1 pressure ratio before it even gets to the secondary turbo. What that'll do is basically mitigate the altitude. The larger turbo will get the pressure from the 8 pounds of ambient that we have at the mountain up to 16 pounds, which is 2 pounds more than we have at sea level, get us where the high pressure turbo has an easy time making the power that we need to make. When Tim at Motorsports Electronics and I conceptualized this whole thing, one of the things that we kind of jammed on that got more and more intriguing is if we take the compound turbo setup, add in the ability to have fresh air anti-lag, we have a car that can conceivably overpower the tires almost immediately. We have really immediate torque and boost that comes in super quick, which a lot of you say, well, that's pointless. You're going to just overpower the tires. Why do you need to do that? Well, here's why. Because of our electronics capability, we can build torque maps. We have 2 different turbos that can stage at different times in the map, in the efficiency graph, and we can graph those per gear. So if we want to have a torque curve that peaks late in lower gears to maybe help with traction, we can do that. So we can develop each of these individual torque maps to maximize the acceleration of the current tire that we're using and make up for the differences in the ambient pressure. So by doing that and having it where in the higher gears the torque can come in earlier, and in the later gears the torque comes, in the higher gears the torque comes in earlier, and in the lower gears the torque comes in a little bit later, we kind of maximize the ability of the car to come off a corner, even if it's maybe geared up a little bit and lugging. Because one of the things that I'd like to do is get a really broad torque curve in the car, because between a broad torque curve and the sequential transmission, we're always going to have tons of power on tap and maximum acceleration. So we've made it pretty far from the last time that you guys have seen it. As you can see, a lot of plumbing going on here. The high pressure turbo is almost completely buried in plumbing. Right here is the T6 flange that the 91 mil turbo sits on. It actually, we used the oil drain tube as the bracket for it, which I thought was kind of a cool way of minimizing the amount of stuff we have. You can see here that we've got the dual wastegates for the high pressure turbo. Because we are running a twin scroll, both of the banks will run completely independently. There is no crossover for the pressure, so we'll bleed the pressure separately from each bank, and then that pressure blends back in to the downpipe for the high pressure turbo, which actually feeds the low pressure turbo up here. Can't really see it too good from your angle, but on the back side here is another wastegate that bleeds pressure out of here around the low pressure turbo. So the other thing that's kind of neat that we got going on is we do have the fresh air anti-lag that we've been plumbing in. It's the headers on headers thing that we were teasing about the other day. A lot of people kind of weren't familiar with it. It's actually nothing new. Audi was doing it years and years ago, and the World Rally Challenge guys use it a lot. For what we're doing, if it wasn't for the mountain, it's highly unlikely that we would need it, just because we have such a big engine with a mild turbo sizing. But on the mountain, what our concern is that we have an ambient pressure that's so low. So when we're running the car here at sea level, we've got about 14 pounds of pressure of atmosphere that are feeding the engine even out of boost. But when we go to the mountain, the data was showing that that gets down to 8 pounds. So the theory is if the anti-lag can just hold the turbo spooled just enough to keep us in that 14 pound absolute range, then the car will never feel like it's at altitude. It'll always run like it does down here. So the anti-lag should go a long way towards helping that. We included a bunch of clips of the acceleration of the car from last year at the hill climb. Thought it'd be fun for you guys to take a look at it. Be looking forward to new videos this year where we will effectively have about 300 to 500 more horsepower, which is going to be massive, and we're going to make sure that it's totally usable. So if you guys have any questions, just let us know in the comments. Happy to answer anything you got. please like and subscribe, because everybody wants you to like and subscribe. It's something you should do on every video, please. So catch you guys next time.